In today's episode, I want to talk with you about the 50mm. It's super popular and probably is one we all have in our camera bags. And that's because it let us take photo in a way that's very similar to how we see things when we focus on a scene. And that's also the reason why we call the 50, the 55, the 40, and all that sort of stuff in between a normal focal length. But today I don't just want to talk about the 50mm itself, because I think that you can find a lot of video on that. Instead, I want to share how and why I use it. Keep in mind that I'll be talking about focal length and not lenses, so in this video I'm not gonna talk about any brand, because you can choose any brand you like. You can spend 2000 on a G Master or 200 on Samyang or Tamron or pretty much everything you like. In case you're curious, I use the 55 Zeiss on my Sony a7R5. I also had the 50 f1.8 and the Sony 50 2.5, which is a very great lens, but I think that this one can fit most of my needs. But I'm planning to switch to manual lenses soon, so things may change. What I love most about shooting at 50 is how quick and easy it is to compose a frame. As I said before, it's very similar to how we see the scene in front of us. So all I have to do is just take the shot without having to worry too much about my positioning. I still have to compose my shot, maybe some minor adjustment here and there, mostly about positioning, but that's definitely faster than 28 or 35. Because with wider focal lengths, your positioning matters more, so you need to adjust more things in order to get a similar frame with a 50 or with a 28. It's not bad at all, it's just a whole different process and maybe also a bit slower. Instead, shooting at 50 makes it easier to avoid any unwanted object or car or people in your frame, which for me is super important, especially in my street photography style. That's because I do a lot of conceptual or abstract street photography. Therefore, having a lens that allows me to avoid basically anything I do not want in the frame is almost mandatory. Some might say that with a 50 you don't really get any wide-angle lens distortion or any telephoto compression, and that's totally true, but this is also the best part, because with the 50 you just get what you saw, which forces you to be the creative part of your images. It feels more challenging, but also in some way it's even easier, because unlike with the 28 or the 35, you do not have to include all that much in your frame. Therefore, with the 50mm you can go straight to the point. And it's also easier to fill the frame without getting closer to your subject. You're not in the scene, so the viewer may not feel your presence, they just see your perspective. Which again is not a bad thing at all, it's just a different way to see photography. This can surely be a shortcut or a facilitation, if you will. It really depends on how you see things, because it can also be a very big disadvantage, because people may not really feel what you're trying to make them feel. For street photography, I use the 50mm, I'd say, to capture moods, details like hands or a specific attitude of a person I saw on the street. Basically almost everything that can catch my eye, but in a tighter and smaller way. I do not look for any big area with a lot of people, but I mostly focus on small details. I mostly do street photography, but when it comes to portrait with the 50mm, I feel like you need a much more clear vision of what you want to achieve. Personally, I do like taking portrait in a much more mugshot style without having to worry to add too many things into my composition and my frame. So probably at 50 you need to be a bit more creative than with any other focal lengths when taking portraits, because as I said before, you can't really rely on any lens distortion or any extreme background separation here. It's true that we should photograph for ourselves and not for any other people and stuff and blah blah blah. I'm totally fine with it, but to me, doing something for your personal growth, for your will to achieve something with your photography is crucial. Taking risks, missing shots, it's totally fine. To me, the very best part of doing this is the process and enjoying it and having fun. Do what you like, but try to push yourself and squeeze your creativity. If you want an example, since I'm in a philosophical mood today, it's just like playing football or soccer or tennis or whatever you like with your friends. If you don't put effort in it and just wander around, you're wasting money, renting the field, and probably your friend will not call you back again. So I try to do more than just the basic task, whether it's street photography, sports, or pretty much everything. With the 50mm, I always try to find that extra element that tells the story in my photos. I feel like street photography is really challenging because it's super easy to fall into banality, especially with a common focal length like the 50, the 40, the 56, even the 35, it's a pretty same story. And that's because I know I can do better and I want to do better, so I am my own final boss to beat. I think you should try to focus more on the 50mm because it forces you to constantly push your photography to the limit to avoid taking boring photos, at least to you. It encourages you to test new composition on the go, to try different things, essentially playing with the camera and the lens to squeeze the best out of both you and your gear. And this can give you great satisfactions. One thing that I like to keep in mind is that aesthetic alone is not enough, just like technique alone is not enough. To achieve great results, you need to combine both technique and aesthetic. Because I personally think that a photo that is just aesthetically pleasing or a photo that is just super complex won't work alone most of the time. So I always try to combine as much as I can these two aspects of photography. Sometimes with great results and sometimes just massively failing the quest. But as everything, the more you do, the better you become. So if you haven't already, go grab a nifty 50, subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, but mostly let me know your thoughts in the comment, and I'll see you in the next one.